Hi, welcome to the demo of my web application Pirate Ships. So I've started up my server here and just get my two demo players working. So the first person to log in nominates the room. It could be a name, so it could be an island name, but they basically pick that, and then each player picks their player name or username to then render open the game space. So we've got our two game spaces and the chat screen, the chat component in the middle, not actually a component. We've got our enable and disable, our check ability, which is kind of the feature I was looking for in this particular web app. Also in the corner here we have currently spinning randomly compass, which is my D3 rendering utilization. Alright, so in each of the screens we've got basically player 1 and player 2 happening, but in terms of Hook's screen, it makes sense that from Hook's perspective they are the first player, so it gets written in first. Blackbeard's the second player, gets written in second. We've got Blackbeard's treasure map, so this is where his treasure is buried, and Hook's guesses will show up from Blackbeard's perspective. Blackbeard is going to guess about Hook's treasure map, which is these dots here, over on this side. Because Blackbeard entered into the room first, Blackbeard gets nominated as the first player, so has access to guessing coordinates form, whereas Hook at this point does not, and so then that gets passed around. Our chat section works nicely with the names coming through with each section, and that comes up live regardless of what's going on in the background in the game. Alright, bit of gameplay. We've got a guess at any point gets sent off. That out of the way. Gets sent off, and the dot shows up pretty much immediately, and that's hasn't been changed by design. So it doesn't matter to Blackbeard whether or not Hook says that it's a hit or a miss, and because these guys might not be in the same room, it's not really necessary for Blackbeard to wait around for Hook's response to that. What's important to understand, and I'll show it at the coding side, is that the colour of this, so the hit or miss version of it, is actually coming from Hook's client coding. So at the moment we have a look at 0, 8, so that's up here, there's no dot there, so that's a miss. If I was to click hit, the same code that sent that it was a miss to Blackbeard is also telling Hook that it is not a hit, so that he actually needs to click miss. So that's one of the things that students get wrong all the time, is that they will give that false response because they might read 08 as sitting over here at 08, and so then they're looking here and saying that it's a miss, when in actual fact it's up here and it's a miss. So the idea of the dot showing up here, but also as well for for Blackbeard guessing and getting that response straight away, he knows that he's guessed 08, and he gets that instant feedback of, oh, this is the location, without needing to check. So he gets that clarification, that sort of gratification that quickly as well. When I clicked miss, you might have noticed that this form showed up, and so now, because I've finished cycling through the process of Blackbeard's first guess, Hook now gets to make a guess, and we're going to streamline this by saying -110 so that we show sending off. Oh, that came up as a hit. Lucky us, we get a guess that we guessed it right there. Like I said, the same code is judging this hit and miss capability. So if I click hit, it comes up straight away, which is really nice, and opens up the chat form. The continue guessing your coordinates form. So that's gameplay there. Bit of a tour through the code just to show that that is actually what's server side, what's server side versus client side. So we've got the other thing is that the chat section is now rendering here in the main view section, and I've changed my index from being TypeScript to being JavaScript. That was my response to having sockets not working. So that'll need to be converted at some point. I was able to get it working when it was in plain JavaScript, and so then that's what it's in at the moment. So that chat component is now here written in full as opposed to being a component itself. I have learned in the last couple of days how to pass between components and the main section, so that could probably get rendered back out to being a component again. I have my data, a lot more detail in the data now, and here we have our socket conversation. So user enters in and sends off the room and their username and get game, but when they send off their room code, we have an on connection here, and so if they jump in and there's more than 2 people in the room, it sends off that the room is full, and the person does not get a room nominated in their client side, and they cop that alert, which I can show here. So we've got 2 people in room 23 already, and so then we get our little prompt. So then once they're in, so there's only 1 or 2, there's none or there's 1 person in the room, then they get to join and their room gets room numbered, and the next piece of the form, so that name section, becomes visible. Then if they are the first person to join the room, they get nominated to have the guest form first. If they are the second person joining, I found that there were issues getting the username. So if the first person to join nominated their name before the second person was even in the room, then that information just kind of gets sent out and doesn't get received by that second person. So that was rendering blank. So then we just have a quick catch for that. Can we have your name, please? And so then that's over here, and they just resend that username when the second person joins in, just in case they don't sync up properly. Then update user, so send and receive the opponent's name, as well as send and receive a game. Here we are, a game. So here's our game building happening on this side in the server, and so it's a random X coordinate, random Y coordinate made into an array, and an array length of 20 points on the screen. So then our chat section sitting here, putting the messages over with the different sections to it, and that nomination of your turn coming through as that first section, as that first entry point. So our guessing of coordinates coming from the form here, gets sent over to the user. So that's actually down in this section here. So here's our sending off of messages in the chat section, and then when we do our form rendering, our form, it validates it here in the main.js, and then gets through to sending the actual coordinates. So that comes over into here, sending the coordinates, and so then that gets sent over to the opponent, or gets sent to the other people in the room, but the room has a maximum of 2, so gets sent to the opponent. And so then here is where on the opponent side, that hit miss judgment, is it a hit or a miss, is happening over on the opponent side, and in hit miss, which is down the bottom here, we send back to the server whether or not it was a hit or a miss. And so then that's here, sending whether or not it's a hit or a miss, goes back to user 1, the first user, and that gets received here, made into our please print it out. So that's where it actually renders out on the screen here. And so then that happens a lot quicker than the human side of actually guessing through the buttons. And then at the bottom here we've got the end of term and disconnecting from the server. So this end of term section is basically the bit where it renders, if I click one of these guys, then it shows up this form ready to guess again, to guess in. Our map view, we didn't change very much in the map view, just doing that paint and adding in this watch section to keep an eye on whether or not print is a hit, shows up. So I still need to put in database integration and just in general to keep the permanency of the games. So if I was to leave this game, and even if I return to the same username, I get a whole new game. So that permanency doesn't exist yet, which I would have better understanding of its if I had a database. So that's my next main step. Have the guesses, have actual guesses control our randomly spinning compass at this point. It's not data driven, it is rendering a animated picture at the moment. Refine the screen size. So this one's to do with the fact that my students are teenagers, so they have their phone on them all the time, and before I integrated the server stuff into it and had to pull the chat screen into my main section, so this bit here, I did have it organized that for a different size screen we would have different size, different locations for things. So that would be the next sort of priority. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with the engagement factor and how much at the moment the functionality of the game matches what I wanted out of the web app, to get kids learning about Cartesian coordinates properly and putting in that fail safe for when they give each other false positives or false negatives, more likely. They're not trying to cheat, or even if they are, they don't have the opportunity to do that here, and the game can move forward.